What if your mystery symptoms in your body aren't actually coming from your body, but rather from the house around you? We're talking about mold and how mold can hit your lungs, your gut, and even your skin all at the same time, and you may never smell a thing. My guest today is Brian Karr, and he's going to explain how this works and how you're not even safe if you live in a dry place like I do in San Diego, and how one single drip in your walls or anywhere in your house can turn into a massive hidden exposure of mold, and how most mold tests that you might have used actually miss the real problem. You're going to learn about a simple dust test that does reveal what you're breathing in the air, an 80-20 way to prioritize fixes in your house, and the 3 fastest ways to cut your mold exposure today. Let's get into it. All right, Brian, I am really excited that you're here. A little selfishly on this whole mold talk, like I said, but yeah, you and your partners and what you've been doing. I mean, you're probably the most knowledgeable experts that we've been able to find on molds, on what's happening inside our houses, maybe elsewhere as well. So I think really getting into what's around us and then what to do about it is my goal here. And I'm just very grateful you're here. So thanks for the time, Brian.
Love it. I'm excited to be here. Love what you guys are doing as well. You said like selfishly, I was like on my show when I have people on, I'm like, asking for a friend. I always like say, ask for a friend.
Always.
But I'm what you guys are doing is amazing, honestly. And it's really cool. And I think it's driving towards the future of where health is going. And I'm really excited to be chatting with you and doing whatever I can do for you guys in our conversation today.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, man, we all need each other. And I think the biggest thing that we're trying to get out here is education. And like I was telling you before we hit record, we haven't really gone into mold. And the reason why I said selfishly is, I had a bunch of mold in me when I did my toxin test and luckily did the therapeutic plasma exchange. Still waiting on what the results there. So we'll see if that stuff's still lingering or not. But I'm imagining I'm not unique in that there's people probably who don't think that they're living in a moldy spot. I'm in San Diego. It's dry and warm. But then I had a bunch of mold. I'm like, I don't live, but that's probably a misconception that you can probably debunk.
It's one of the biggest ones, right? And I think if literally everyone tested themselves, the percentage of people that have some sort of mold toxicity issue, people would just be amazed by the sheer number, right? And it's tough to wrap your head around sometimes because the stuff you can't really see, right? And so it's really hard a lot of times to connect some sort of impact from something that you don't see.
Yeah.
And there's also like the stigma with mold where like it could only be in like dirty houses or this type of place. Like I don't have a mold in my house, right? And it's like almost this thing like people feel like they did something wrong or they're gross or they're something. And like that's not what it is at all. It's so common. And it's, in my opinion, one of the biggest foundational impacts to health across all body systems. And it does this for 2 reasons. One, it's the only external contaminant, let's say, that can impact your body in more than one body system directly, right? So let me expand on that. So like if you eat, let's say you eat, it goes straight to your gut, right? Now, obviously from your gut, you can have leaky gut, you can have other things, right? But the direct area of impact is one body system. It's your gut. That's where it goes. Drinking water, same thing, straight to your gut, right? So a lot of us, when we're thinking about environmental and even, if you're running tox panels and stuff, it's like, oh, the food I'm eating might be causing this, right? And a lot of times, a lot of the doctors shift more towards food as like the primary place to look first. And I actually think that, of course, I mean, there's stuff there too, right? It's not like that there's not stuff there. But I actually think that it's the smaller impact when you're seeing these toxins come up higher in the tox panels as compared to the air and the environment that you're in. Because the environment that you live in, it directly impacts 3 body systems right away. So we just talked about eating and drinking is one. So when you're the air around you, one, you're gonna breathe it. So the obvious is your lungs and your respiratory, right? That's the first one. Now the second, when you breathe, like through your nose, you have postnasal drip. right? And that directly seeds your gut. So that means the air that is in your environment gets into your nose, into your sinuses, it gets into your mucus, and then you have postnasal drip, and you're effectively directly impacting your gut from the air that you're breathing. And so now if you just stop there, you have your respiratory system that's pumping out into the blood, and then you have your gut that we all know about, the gut, the gut barrier, the gut-brain axis, like all that stuff, right? So now you're hitting so many areas of your body, but it's all directly coming from the air, right? And then the third area, and it's something we don't think about as much, but we're always so concerned about it, like with the makeup that you put on and the lotions and the sunscreens and all this stuff. What is in your air settles on your skin. And your skin is one of your biggest detox pathways out, right? So a lot of times you'll see skin issues manifest in people, and it's because they kind of have like clogged up methylation paths and things like that. And so stuff like starts trying to come out of their skin. And so it's also an inbound road. It's not just a one-way street. And so if you have your skin getting hit from the outside, you have your lungs kind of coming and pushing, from the respiratory tract, and then you have the gut-brain connection and the leaky gut that gets out into the rest of the body. You're triggering inflammatory responses multiple places at the same time in your body. And so when you look at it like that, this is why I think it's the biggest foundational, like systemic body, chronic conditions, like all that stuff. The environment that we're in is just such a huge component of it. And while we see it and have seen it for a while, I think that like more the messaging and just like people becoming aware of it, it's like just scratching the surface right now on how important that it is. But if we can fix that component of it, you're reducing so much body burden at that point. And you start seeing, when you reduce body burden, a lot of these, systemic chronic things, they start to reduce, right? And it can be more severe when you're talking about like childhood developmental brain issues and autism and things like that. Cognitive decline when you get older, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all this stuff, right? But then there's fertility, and there's autoimmune issues, and there's just all of these, there's these like mysterious chronic fill in the blank that no doctor can figure out. And that stuff is happening for a reason. And a lot of times it's that you have this, you hear this phrase root cause all the time, but you have this root cause trigger that's creating some sort of immune response, inflammatory response, or maybe even a toxic, like an actual toxin burden that's in there that is affecting different systems in your body in different ways. And so it manifests all over the place, and it becomes very hard to pinpoint it. It's like, oh, I have a cough, so I must have this, right? Like one symptom equals something here, but that's not what it is. Like you could be breathing something and have irritable bowel syndrome as a result of it. Like, and it makes no sense to you. Or you're in your house and you're having cognitive memory issues. Your kids are like all of a sudden acting differently. Your husband's like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm just like really tired all the time. And then somebody else over here is like, oh, my rheumatoid arthritis is just flaring. And you look at that picture of the 4 people in that house that all have something different in different body systems, like all over the place happening. And you're like, well, how can it be the house? Because we're all in the same house. So it can't be the house, because we would all be reacting the same. And the thing that people miss on this is that our bodies are so different that a single trigger will cause a different reaction inside of every single person based on, where their weak link is in the body, right? And I think that you see that pattern, it's like a huge red flag that there's something going on environmentally.
Quick break. If what Brian is telling you, it has you kind of side-eyeing your home and your symptoms that you might be feeling, just know that MD Lifespan has put together a step-by-step mold detox guide that's totally free. And this is how you can test your environment and your body and what to do first when you feel like rapid removal matters. So the MD Lifespan Plasma Exchange protocol uses therapeutic plasma exchange to help remove mold mycotoxins quickly. So get the guide and book a free consult at mdlifespan.com/mold. Again, that's www.mdlifespan.com/mold. I've heard, Dr. Savage talks a lot about how your home is the place that's probably the most toxic with just so many of these things.
I mean, I agree, right? And even the EPA has information, out about this, that like our indoor environments are more polluted than the outside. We spend 90% of our time indoors. And now, especially post-COVID, we're spending more time in our actual homes as opposed to going somewhere else for half of our day, right? Like I just work from home now. That didn't used to happen. And I'm sure there's many people that is the same way, right? So now if you have issues in your home, it's almost like you're being exposed twice as much now because you're not leaving and going to a secondary place that might not have the same issue that's going on. And it's starting to hit harder, right? Like, it's interesting when COVID happened, tangent. I was really concerned that We Inspect, which is my inspection company, I thought that we were like, there was a chance that we might go under because who's going to let some random person in their house? Right. We're all so afraid of being near other people, right? And, I was obviously, like a lot of people, really concerned about that. And what actually happened is that we boomed. And we boomed because people were trapped in their houses and they weren't leaving.
Yes.
And so their exposures were twice as much, 3 times as much because they weren't leaving. And the health reactions just started compounding. And it was now they were balancing out. Am I concerned about this thing? Where literally every day I'm getting worse and worse down the health thing that, it's impacting me. And it actually was a huge boom point for us instead of what we were concerned that it would be, right? And it's very telling to see that, all the people that we work with, it's not like you go into homes and there's like mold all over the walls. That's not how it works, right? It was like what you were just describing too. I live in a place, I'm not in the South, it's not super mega humid, I don't have water damage everywhere, I don't have all these things. But there is water damage in almost every, I would say 99% of homes there's water damage. And it's just really subtle. And it's not big floods that cause all these problems. It's my kitchen sink dripped a little bit into the cabinet, or like when my kids take a shower, they splash outside the shower and it gets on the wall next to the shower. Or it's like these little things that when you add them up, it's adding a lot of little things to create a much bigger net impact on the sum of all of those things, right? And then we are breathing the sum of all of those things. And that's what happens a lot. And the thing is that as homeowners or renters, just people who live in houses, like we're not really taught this stuff by anybody. And so we think when I have, my garbage disposal leaked under my sink and it fell into my, dripped into water, went into my sink cabinet, we're like, oh, we'll just dry it out and get a new disposal and be done. But you actually there's like a hidden mold problem under your cabinet now. Now that's going to constantly be part of in addition to your airflow cycle throughout the house. And all these little things that go on, that it creates an exposure that then starts to build up in our bodies, right? And we can't like counteract it once it gets too much.
It's wild. I mean, I'd love for you to, I want to ask the question, but also I want you to preface with like, your background as well, because you've seen a lot of homes, you've helped thousands of people, I think personally, right? Like who have had some kind of issue personally. But back to this whole thing of like, man, the smallest drip can literally change everything, and that's what's stuck in my mind right now. Is it's almost like it could happen anywhere, like you said, most houses.
It's in every house.
Yeah.
So I've been personally like going in, and obviously we built a larger business now to where I'm not going in every house. But like I started doing this, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years ago, whatever the date is. And I could literally count on one hand over that 10, 12 years, the number of times I went in a house and I didn't find something.
Wow.
One hand, it's 5. Like that's it. And so it's tough because then people will be like, oh, well, there's mold everywhere. So like, oh, this is a lost cause. Like, what are we doing? And it's interesting. It brings up 2 things as like I talk through. First off is a lot of times people are looking for like local, they go on Yelp and they look for a mold inspector, right? And so many times like, oh, you don't have a problem. Well, just take that versus what I just said of 12 years and I can only count 5 times that I haven't found something in the house, right? So there's this very, very big disparity in like how to actually find the problems in a house and how to test it properly. Most of your local inspectors are using the wrong tests for the wrong reasons. And so it's like if I'm trying to test if I'm trying to test for mycotoxins in my body, or let's just say something different. I'm just trying to like look at my cholesterol panel, my LDL, HDL, whatever. Yeah. It's a blood draw. Like that's what you do to figure that out. And it's the equivalent of coming in and saying, I want to know my full cholesterol panel. And they're like, cool, we're going to do a breath test and we're going to tell you your cholesterol panel. And then you'd be like, oh, okay, you're the doctor, I should do a breath test. And they get the results back. They're like, God, I don't see any cholesterol here, so you must be good, right? And like, that's the equivalent of what's going on with these inspectors. Yeah. So you have that like very big disparity there, which then makes it really difficult for somebody who does run like you did, like had a clinical test, right? Yep. It's like, oh, I see these toxin in my body. And then you call, local Inspector John over here and they're like, oh, you don't have a problem. And the issue with that is by creating that false sense of security for that individual by saying you don't have a problem, you're actually prolonging their health issues, because now in their mind, they're like, I've checked the box of the house is fine. When the reality is the house probably has a number of problems for you to be seeing toxin levels in your urine or your blood the way that you're seeing them in a test like that. Like, it's not one or two things that causes that. And so that's a very big challenge that has to get overcome, and for people who are going through this. The other thing is, when you hear what I just said, where like I could pretty much go in any house and find something, is then, well, that means I'm gonna have to remediate all this stuff. Like, every house is a problem. Like, there's no hope. Yeah. And what we've learned over the years is it's not about getting every single area mold out of the house, right? I can tell you right now in my place right now, I know there's two things going on right now in my house. I rent. I have limited capability, right? So I do things to kind of manage it, in a space, saying, listen, any house that I go into, if I'm in a place that has like less than 3 problems, like, that's a win, right? Like, that's just kind of how I look at it, right? So I'm like, I know I have 2 things going on. I rent my house. I only have so much control. And so I'm like, okay, so how do I handle this, right? And so I think, like, when you're dealing with a home issue, like, we go in a home, let's say we find 10 problems, let's just say. It's not that you have to fix every single one of the 10. What we do is we then correlate what's in your body. So if you've done clinical mycotoxins and it's like, hey, you've got, this toxin, that toxin, whatever, we'll correlate that to what's in the house. And then we're going to prioritize the remediation plan to the areas that are manifesting in your body, to the things that we're seeing that are hitting you, nice. Right? Okay. Yeah. And so, like, think 80-20 concept. I mean, that's effectively what it is, right? So it's like, hey, we found 10 things. We'll prioritize them out and say, hey, we think maybe these 3 are the biggest drivers. So, like, run at these 3, and we think you're going to get, reduction that's going to be meaningful. And that doesn't mean you have to do the other 6 or 7 potentially, right? And we've seen success with people so much around having the right data to drive really smart decisions on, let's call it treatment, if you will, right? The same way you would for a body, right? Yep. Like, you could do a full body testing panel, right? Like, I just did the function health panel, right? It's like, hey, here's all the stuff, right? It's like, okay, but what are the biggest needle movers that I need to focus on, right? I can't do everything at once. So you work on the biggest needle movers, and then all of a sudden you start to see other things kind of improve, right? Because you're reducing, kind of the biggest things that are attacking in a way, right? And that's really the approach in the house too.
That makes sense. And yeah, the 80-20 thing, I mean, it'd be impossible to fix everything. I mean, unless you're starting scratch, and then you're probably exposing all sorts of other things. Talk to me about the testing. Like, so why is this such an issue with, the people on Yelp who are using these tests? Like, are they just clueless, or are they just like the tools aren't there?
It's interesting. I was just like, I'm working on writing something about this right now. And the only reason that I know how to do this is because I had my own issue way back 10, 12 years ago. And I lived in an apartment, and I had a pipe burst in my ceiling, and water came out, and it's like this whole thing. And I started getting sick. I started having like cognitive, like brain fog stuff. I started getting skin stuff that was happening, like eczema and things like that. And I happened to be dating my future wife, and her dad happened to be literally the top expert in the world at this.
Wow.
So that's how it happened.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm talking to her way back when this is going on. I'm saying, I don't feel as sharp as I do. Like, oh my God, I washed my face today. I have all these patches and shit on my face, like what's going on? And she's like, you had this thing happen. You sound just like all the people my dad works with. Like, I think you have a mold problem, she says, right? And I was like, wow, what would I know? I didn't know anything about it. What did I do as somebody who knew nothing? I called the landlord, they came in, they dried out the ceiling, and they said everything was fine. And so I think that everything is fine because this guy owns buildings, he must know what he's doing, right? And so then I call them and they're like, well, you can't have mold because everything's dry, but we'll send somebody in to come, to come test your house, right? And this is kind of what we're getting to. So what these people do when they come in, they take an air sample pump and they just stick it in the middle of the room for 5 minutes and then they leave. And that's how they test a house. And their rationale behind it is that's the air you're breathing. So we're going to test this air, right? Now, at the time it makes sense. And for a lot of people that makes sense. Once you kind of like dig in and actually understand like building science and how things move around and how it works, you realize that there's actual studies that say you should not be doing that and you should be testing in a different way. And the reason that test doesn't work, this is what everyone does. Everyone comes in and does quote air quality testing, and they'll put an air pump in your room and they might test 4 or 5 rooms in your house and say, hey, we tested all these rooms. Your air's great, right? Like, that's what they're going to say. And there's a couple reasons that it just doesn't work, right? This is the wrong test for the wrong reason, right? What they're trying to determine in that test is, do you have a mold problem? That's what they're trying to determine, okay? Now, fundamentally, that's the wrong question, because what if you did have a mold problem? How do you fix it? That test doesn't tell you where it's coming from.
Right. It's just whatever's circulating around, right?
Right. So then I did an internal study myself when I was going through houses for like a year. So I found in doing that, like if there's a wall behind me for those of you not watching. So let's say in this wall, I saw like a little bubbling paint on the baseboard or something. I was like, oh, this is a sign of maybe water intrusion. I'm going to test behind the wall. So I'd actually put like a little hole in the wall. It's like the size of a Sharpie pen. And you put a tube through the hole and you pull air from behind the wall, right? So the idea is water and moisture is the precursor to mold growth. You can't see mold a lot of the times because it's hidden. And the reason it's hidden is because behind the wall, less airflow, less dilution, more humidity will build up in there because you're not getting the air to move. And so you might have a moisture issue that on the front side of the wall just looks like a little tiny bubble in the paint. But on the back side, because it can't aerate out and it can't like move very well, it starts to manifest back behind the wall, right? And so that's how most problems happen. And so I would do that, I would test that. And then I would just go walk 2 feet away and I would put an air sample pump up at like air quality monitoring level like all these other people did. 78% of the time when there was a problem in the wall 2 feet away, the air sample that was just in the middle of the room said there was no problem.
Wow.
It's just fundamentally the wrong type of test to be using in that space because you have there's a lot of variability. What's floating around in the 5 minutes, right? Was somebody in the room jumping around or was the room pretty subtle? Well, there's so much that goes into it. And when you think about it, and it's funny because a lot of this stuff, if you just think about it, like, and you get a logical frame around it, and then you rethink about what's meaning, you're like, oh, of course that doesn't work, right? And it's like, so I use this example all the time. My office is upstairs in my house, kitchen obviously downstairs, right? And so when my wife is cooking, it smells really good downstairs, right? Where does it not smell? In my office upstairs. Does that mean that she's not cooking? No.
Right.
It just means that the air has diluted enough by the time it gets to my office that I'm not smelling it. And then as soon as I walk out of my office and start getting closer, I start noticing the smell a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and all the way until I get all the way down there. And it's like a lot, right?
Yeah, right.
So as air moves further from the source, it gets diluted with the other air in the house. And then you're going to not notice the things that are there that you would otherwise. It doesn't mean it's not there. And it doesn't mean that if I don't walk into the other room, I would be exposed to the smell, right? I would be, right? But just at that moment in time in the office where I am, because the air isn't moving up here as strong as it is to the loft or whatever, I don't smell it, right? And it's exactly what happens with mold issues in a house. And so what you need to do is you need to find all the stoves, all the pots that are cooking, not test in my office 20 feet away where the air is going to get diluted. And at that point, you're going to find all the little kitchens where everything is going on, and all of that together adds up into the main space, and that's what you're exposed to. But the problem with mold is that you can't smell it. So like with my wife cooking, I can smell it, right? But with mold, you can't smell it. And so what happens, you get all this invisible particle flow that comes from these colonies where they were growing and releasing spores and even toxins and things like that. And that gets into your airflow in your house and you have no idea and you can't smell it.
Jeez.
And it adds up and it adds up.
Yeah, and the fact that it can go undetected by smelling, because I know some people will say, "Oh, I could smell mold in this house." Maybe a type of mold. I don't know if that's
Well, that's a fair question. And so, or comment. And so mold will have a smell, but only when it's actively growing.
I see.
It's its digestive process, just like how we digest food and have to go to the bathroom, right? And then there's a smell that comes from that. Like this is kind of the same thing that happens, right? Now, if mold is not actively growing, it's not actively digesting anything and it's not off-gassing anything as a result of that. The thing though, is that mold doesn't have to be actively growing for the particles and the toxins and the things to come off the colony and still impact us. And so most times you're not going to smell something because most times there's not an active moisture issue that's going on, right? Yeah. So the reason that the mold will be actively growing or eating is because the moisture is there. That's almost like a light switch that turns it on. Right. It's like, oh, moisture's here, factory's in operation today, right? Yeah. And then as soon as the moisture goes away, it's like all the workers checked out for the day and left and they come back when the water comes, right? And they start working. Yep. But like that example I gave you with the sink cabinet where there was, a garbage disposal that leaked or whatever, that happened one time. It leaked, caused a problem. Yeah. Water dried out. It never came back again. So you're not going to have the odor or the smell because it's not going to be active again. But if it grew, it doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. It's like a plant or a flower. Like you plant a flower, the flower grows. You stop watering the plant doesn't like get up and like grab its kids and go look for another river somewhere. Like that's not what it does, right? Yeah. It folds over, it gets dry, the leaves start to break off. And imagine instead of leaves and flower petals breaking off, it's pieces of the colony breaking off. And then they move into the airstream of the house.
They just somehow find their way around eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does it sound like the testing gets done in a bunch of different places? And I definitely want you to let us know, tell us a little bit about the dust test and where people can actually go do something about this right now.
Yeah, so there's a couple paths. So the dust test is an at-home test kit, right? So this isn't where you need an inspection company to come in your house or do anything. You literally order this kit, comes to your house. Now, I've been talking about how air, there's variability in the air, right? Because you're diluting from the source. Well, the thing about dust, and there's studies and stuff that support this, gravity is going to bring particle down to the surface in a house. So you eliminate the variability of what happens to be floating around right now because you're going straight to the collection source where it all settles. Mm-hmm. And so what the dust test allows you to do is think of like a Swiffer pad effectively. That's basically what it looks like. And you're just dusting your house. Like it's not hard. You just collect dust from the house. And the goal is to understand what's the composition of the dust. And so it's analyzing 36 different mold species that were identified in an EPA study as the most prevalent in homes in the early 2000s. And it's then letting you know how many of them are present, how many are elevated, kind of how do you rank compared to other homes. It kind of gives like a scoring system that's tied to it. And just from that, you're going to be able to see so that it's a scoring system 1 to 5. Yeah. So just from that, you're going to be, oh, am I a 4 or a 5? Okay, I have a relatively significant issue going on here. And you know that you're not going to get to a 4 or a 5 by only having 1 or 2 things in your house, right? So you can kind of start to understand high level, kind of what's my risk here? Like how significant may an issue be, right? Yep. The other really cool thing with the dust test is if you had done clinical mycotoxin testing, let's say, you can actually, in our portal where we deliver results, we'll ask you hey, have you done any of these tests? You'll be like, oh yeah, I used X lab to do it. Okay, cool. Select that lab and which toxins were elevated. Oh, aflatoxin, trichothecene, whatever it was, you just check the ones that were elevated. And then when we report back in your portal with all your results, we're going to show you the molds in your house that are directly correlating to what's in your body. So now it's not this question of well, is my house causing it? I don't know what these molds are. It's going to say, hey, here's your score of kind of the load in your house. And then you also have 12 molds in your house that are directly tied to what's in your body, right? And it's going to really help give somebody clarity around the need to have to do something or not. right? And that's always what was missing, is just like, I don't know if I have a problem. Do I have a problem? Do I not have a problem? And with this, it's like very clear, there is something here. It's correlated to what's in your body. If you've done that test, you don't have to have done a clinical test. You can still run it without, but if you did, you can get that extra layer. And then it helps you understand, okay, so now that I know that there's something here that's at least like meaningful, like I understand I need to kind of like dig into it more.
Yeah.
And then that's where you get into like the more specific testing throughout a house. And that's where like we inspect or something would come in. And so the goal there is to diagnose where it's coming from.
Right.
So we call this exposure mapping. So when we go through a house, we don't actually really think of what we do as inspections. We think of what we do as exposure mapping. And so when you're talking about exposure mapping, the way that we look at it is that you're reverse engineering from your nose and your mouth to origin, right? So it's almost like when you do like goal setting and stuff, you're like, where do I want to be? And then how do I get there? And you reverse engineer the steps to get there, right? It's the same concept. So like, what's getting up to my face? That's the equivalent of your dust test, right? Now, where is it coming from? You start reverse engineering the paths that it gets to there. And so it's your heating ventilation system that's circulating everything around. And then it backs down into the sources like this wall, this ceiling, this cabinet, whatever. And you effectively go through this exposure mapping process. And that's what helps us to then prioritize the areas that are most needed to address, to reduce your exposure.
It's interesting. I could see it. So it makes sense. I mean, it sounds like the dust test is something that probably all should get aware of. I mean, it's kind of like the toxin test that we talk about here, empty lifespan does, is once you know your data inside of you, what's happening, then you could do something about it. You can figure out the next steps with that, whatever that is.
It's the same thing. It's interesting. Like, a lot of us have heard the phrase terrain theory.
Yeah.
So you have germ theory, terrain theory, right? And the idea is that like terrain theory means if you have like a healthy functioning body, that it will fight things off more effectively. So you want your terrain to be strong. Well, if you think terrain theory and think of our bodies living in a house, the house is the secondary terrain that our body is in. So your house is actually influencing your internal terrain, which is then influencing your resiliency to fight things off or to not fight things off. So it's actually a very well-known, understood concept of like the environment of a place, except terrain theory was the internal environment of the body, right? But what environment does that body live in? And we know that you get 3 direct body system impacts from that area, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
So dual terrain theory, I think, is the future of really being able to optimize our bodies by understanding its exposure to get our internal terrain to be optimized properly to then thrive and be be resilient and all that stuff when it comes to health, illness, chronic disease, and all that stuff.
Where can people, I guess, give us some resources really fast of where people can go, snag the test, and you mentioned a few other things as well, like We Inspect.
Yeah, so the at-home test kit, it's such an easy thing. Like I would just start with this. It's called the dust test. It's that easy. thedusttest.com. There it is. So that's all you have to write. And I will say this, like anyone who you leave your house and you feel better on vacation, then you come back and you don't.
Yeah.
There's probably something happening in your house. You have multiple people in your home that all have like different symptoms, but they're not really related. There's probably something in your house that's triggering that. You have some sort of chronic thing that no matter how much you try to like treat it, it continuously is a problem. You probably have something going on in your house, right? So if you just fall into any one of those 3 categories, like do the dust test. It can literally save you 3, 5, 10 years in trying to figure out like what is causing your issues, right? And it's such an easy thing to do. So that's the dust test. And then We Inspect is our national inspection exposure mapping company that I talked about. And so we service the entire US. We work with doctors all over the country. They refer all their patients to us everywhere. And we go in and do this process and help them kind of figure out where things are, map it for them, prioritize it for them, and help them get the path that they need that balances out like expenses versus impact, right? Because that's so important. Like it's not gut your whole house. It's where are the couple things that are going to drive the biggest impact for you.
It's crazy. I mean, I'm going to snag the dust test right away because like the fact that I know my own toxin level, at least before TPE, I can have a map, and I know my wife also did a toxin, so it's actually interesting because we had different molds, which were ironic, and we've lived together for, I don't know, it's 15 plus years now. So it's like, that's an interesting one too.
Well, so we see that a lot. Like I'll see a whole family does it, right? The wife and the husband and the kids.
Yeah,
And you might have like a couple overlapping ones.
right.
And then there's others that are only in one and not the other one,
Yep.
right? And it goes to the fact that our bodies are all very different. And so you have genetic makeup, you have previous exposures in life that are going to make you more sensitive to a certain kind of mold than somebody else would. You have your current health position. Like if you have Lyme disease right now, like your body burden is already a lot higher than somebody who doesn't, right? So you have all these things that will let certain things show up in somebody that's not going to show up in somebody else. And it's common, it's not uncommon, right? So you do see that.
That makes sense. And it's, yeah, that blew us away. Coffee was a common one. So we're like, oh, okay. Yeah, the aflatoxin, like, okay, well, I can probably do something with that.
Yeah, no, listen, the food, like obviously you want to, my water is, for me personally, water's on point.
That's right.
My coffee is not, no mycotoxin coffee. Like there's things that you can do. But when you think of like in your house, or just in a day, you take 20,000 breaths every day.
Wow.
20,000. That's the equivalent of filling the volume of like a normal sized swimming pool in someone's backyard.
Wow.
Okay?
That's wild.
That's how much air comes into your body consistently. Like imagine going out to the pool in your backyard and instead of it being clean and blue, it's like green and gross. And then I tell you have to drink the whole thing. And then tomorrow it's full again. I'm like, you have to go drink it again today.
Gee.
You have to go drink it again today. The volume that's coming in from the air compared to the volume that's coming in from food and water, it's not even close, right? And it doesn't mean that one's more, that the food and water is important, of course, right? But when I give these examples, I just want to kind of give visualizations to not discount the air, because I actually think it's the most important thing, but I think it gets discounted a lot because you can't see it. And it's just not as prevalently talked about, right? But when you like understand like the volume of what you're taking in and how it impacts your body in multiple ways, you kind of get the comparisons. Just want to bring more awareness to the importance of it, because fixing and tweaking that can have like a profound impact on health.
To wrap this up, like it's almost like a fire session of like, what are the most actionable things that you would recommend that you want people to remember and do after they walk away from this chat?
Yeah, well, first let's talk about like a couple things you can do to reduce exposure, right? Like one thing I don't want to do is like, hey, here's something to be concerned about, like come off with nothing that you can do about it. So
We don't want that. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, there's some easy things that you do. The first thing we talk about, air filtration, huge, right? So again, if we're talking about we get exposed because we breathe, then we say the next path back as your exposure map back is what's floating in the air, right? And so if I can reduce what's floating in the air, then that's going to help reduce what I'm exposed to. So air filtration is going to pull out of the air and help reduce some of that. So that's one thing you can do. A second thing you can do, and it's really easy to do, it's kind of like the poor man's air flushing is kind of like how I refer to it. But we talked earlier about like how homes are more heavily contaminated than the outside just because of, the time we spend and how it's all closed. If you open a door or window in the front of the house and door or window in the back of the house, you're going to create a natural air flush throughout the house. You're going to create a natural air dilution where you're pulling in out and you're outputting what's in the house out of the back, basically. And it doesn't have to be long. You could do it for like 10 minutes, right? Do it for 10 minutes, maybe once or twice a day. And you actually can get a really good amount of air dilution and airflow that comes out like that. And that's such like an easy way to just sort of like, if the pollution in your house is getting more and more and more because we have all the things in the house, like, okay, I'm going to do an air flush and I'm going to move it from like, 90% down here a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Then that allows to then reduce what's in the air, which is getting to your face, right? So the whole goal is like less airbound into our face. So you got air filtration, you got air, air flushes, air dilution, quick things you could do. The third thing is, and the reason that the dust test tests dust is because settled dust is what pops up into our breathing zone, and that's what we're exposed to. So the third thing that you can do is do really frequent dust cleanings throughout the house. If dust is the path to the air that then gets to our face, then by removing the dust, you have less to pop up into the air, which is then less to pop into your face. So if you just think like frequent, dust wiping, dust cleanings throughout the house, a couple air flushes in a day, and air filtration units in, that is a really good way to just kind of manage some things as you're working towards, trying to get a more permanent solution.
That's awesome, man. And the air flush, I'm like, I naturally will do that sometimes, but now like I do it in the mornings typically, and
Yeah.
just it's a little chillier, but it's fine. We just but now, like you said, multiple times a day. I mean, you could just on those, you probably can smell the difference in some cases, but just know like, yeah, stuff's getting flushed out. It can be done
Yeah. I mean,
quickly.
you probably do it because subconsciously it feels good,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And there,
Yeah.
your body knows a lot of stuff that your brain doesn't register,
Yeah.
And so, and
True.
so you have like this natural inclination to do this, to get outside, to do these things. And it's a way that you could kind of draw it in. Yeah.
I love it, man. Well, thanks for leaving us with that, with the actionable tips, Brian. And again, we'll link everything up. It's going to be super useful. Don't just take this information and store it that way. Share it and do something about it. So, all right,
Awesome.
Brian. Have a
Great.
great one.
Thanks.
Thank you.